So here we go. Prior to 1956, there were no police dogs that were being trained with a muzzle. People at Stukenbrock, which is a small town in Germany, there's a training facility there called the Landespolizeischule für den Eastern Inferior. They saw problems with clothing along with arm fixations because they would do an all concealed sleeve training back in those days. They also recalled that during the Phaeton times, there was an event where muzzle dogs, mainly mastiffs, fought a prisoner. If the prisoner was able to defeat the dogs, he was free. If not, then they went on to the next prisoner because the dogs would actually beat him to where sometimes, according to history, they actually killed the guy. And this is the reasons that we muzzle fight. We're trying to enhance the genetic fight, which by definition is the drive to measure physical prowess against rivals. A canine is fighting for the sole purpose to see if he can win. On the street, when we're working police or military dogs, we may not get a lot of stimulation. They may find somebody that's hiding perfectly still, and we have to have a dog that's willing to engage that if we send them. So that's one of the reasons that we don't like to use a lot of equipment. We can safely reenact any situation. Say if you had a dog that apprehended someone under a van, but he was a little bit reluctant. Maybe he didn't want to do it at first. Maybe he didn't bite the guy like he normally does. You can go back and set that scenario up with a dog and muzzle pretty safely. It allows for advanced training like the picture training, which is the second class that we do on muzzle stuff. And that's a lot of scenario-based training where the people are perfectly still and are not giving the dog any stim whatsoever. And it allows for more conflict in your maintenance training. If we use equipment, no matter what we do, the equipment's always present. So we could do building searches in the woods, car extractions, but if we're always wearing equipment, the dog always knows the equipment's there. We do a lot of concealed sleeve stuff, but when we do, I like to wear 2 concealed sleeves so the dog don't see a visible difference between the agitators. And once we get a dog fighting good in muzzle, probably 90% of what we do is done inside the muzzle. Conflict, by definition, is just constantly varying demands and or perimeters of expectations and training conduct designed to prevent a program response and build flexibility and increase confidence in the dog. So that's what we're looking for, is to have the dog as street ready as we possibly can. And by muzzle training, that gives us the best possibility that we have that the dog may engage the first time. Anybody that's did a lot of handling dogs on the street will tell you that as you apprehend better, more people, the dog tends to be better at doing it. What we try to do in the muzzle is mimic the street as close as we can so that the dog does a good job on the first apprehension that he has on the street. There's 3 different levels of bites seen in dogs as the way we see it. A prey-driven dog sees you as a lesser threat than himself. Most police service dogs are trained this way. The problem with this type of training is when the bunny rabbit turns into a ninja rabbit. So when the suspect starts putting a lot of pain or pressure on the dog, if the dog is working strictly out of prey, the dog will go and seek weaker prey. So if you got a person that's perfectly still, nature tells a dog that when prey is perfectly still, it's like a pack of wolves chasing an elk. As long as the elk runs, they chase him. When the elk stops running, they circle him and they start to break him down in the back end, because that's where he has the most prey, is in the back end, because he can't see back there to fight. And so if a dog runs across a person that's perfectly still, nature tries to tell them that that person can hurt them. And if a dog is working strictly out of prey, a lot of times they'll leave that person and they'll go look for lesser prey. Many years ago, before we started doing a lot of muzzle work, a lot of times guys would search woods or a building and not find nobody. And the guy would be arrested a few days later, and they would go talk to him. And he would say that the dog came up to him and he just remained perfectly still, and the dog left and went on searching somewhere else. So that was one of the main reasons that sparked us to start doing muzzle work. A survival-driven dog sees you as a greater threat than himself. That's the drive to flee or bite real or imaginary dangers. Usually one hard bite, and then he lets go and flees when he sees an opportunity. So if you corner a dog that's in survival drive, he may bite you, but as soon as you give him an escape route, he'll let go and take off running. And a genetic fight bite is what we're trying to improve by muzzle working, is the dog sees you as an equal threat. He's biting full, pushing into the bite, wrapping with their front legs. And as the fight escalates, so does the dog. So if somebody starts to put pressure on the dog or to put pain on the dog, a genetic fight-driven dog will up his fight and will drive into the bite even harder. And we're very fortunate we get to do dogs in a lot of neat places. And, you know, we've had dogs that's been injured while biting, stabbed, hit with stuff, whatever. And the dog just continued to bite harder and to drive in because of the genetic fight. Now, muzzle training can't erase bad genetics. So you can't take a weak, inferior dog that doesn't have good genetics and turn him into some street beast that's going to do the job that he needs to do. But what muzzle training will do is take a good genetic-driven dog and will enhance him to the point where he can be much more successful than if he didn't have the training. People ask us all the time, what's the best muzzle to use, or what muzzle do you use? I don't get any benefits out of hoping, you know, or telling you that we use K9's muzzles. I don't get any free muzzles, that's for sure. But I do feel like that a K9 makes the best muzzle for doing what we do. And the reasons are you have multiple ways to adjust them. The dog gets more airflow. We do tracking in muzzles. We do building searches, patrol routes. A lot of what we do in a muzzle. So here in the Southeast, it gets very hot in the summer. The dog needs to have airflow to stay cool, and he's also got to have airflow for his nose to work. The dogs can drink water without having to take the muzzle off. We'll get into why that's important here in a little while. It's easy for us to use the K9 muzzles and make half muzzles out of them. We'll talk about that later. And it's also very easy to do muzzle pull-offs. So the K9 muzzles are available. I think you can buy them from us. I think you can buy them from Ray Allen. I think Dave Reaver out on the West Coast sells them. K9 Dynamics in Canada sells them also. And there may be some other places that I don't know about, but they're made in Austria, and they're really nice muzzles for what we do. I want to talk to you here about, if I can get this video, I don't know why it doesn't play. Okay, guys, I don't, these videos was playing earlier. I don't know if it has something to do with this or, let me see if I can figure out why these aren't playing here. I don't know. It doesn't look like any of them is going to play. There's a lot of them on here. That's gonna be bad. You have any idea why they wouldn't be playing?
Are they in your PowerPoint presentation, or are they just a web link to like
No,
YouTube?
they're in it, and they were playing earlier. I mean, I tried them, and they played fine. I don't know if it has something to do with going through Zoom. I don't see any way to manually make them play. It's like they're not even here. I was trying to see if I could start out, make it, you know, and turn them on manually. But before, when you and I tried it and you left, I went through them and they all started automatically. I mean, I can describe them, but it would be much better if we had a muzzle, if, you know, if we had them here.
There's an advanced features thing you need to activate when you are not in full screen. Maybe that's the issue.
It might be. I had it on full screen trying to get it to work.
So that there's activate.
Yes, sir.
Yes, maybe that is the issue.
So when I hit it, activate, it wants me to sign up. I mean, they were literally working a while ago. If I click that use free at office.com, you think it'll work?
Hopefully it doesn't crash.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. Wow. I'm sorry about that. I can try to explain it to you, I don't see any way to open them or make them do it manually. I'm clicking on everything. Do you guys see anything? Most of the time when they don't work, you can do them manually, but it's almost like there's just a picture and not the video.
Hey, Ricky.
Yes.
Do you have just the video file itself in a folder on your computer? You might just open the video file only and play it that way.
Well, I don't have it on this computer because I came here to the new kennels to do this program because so many students are up there on the Wi-Fi at the office. Now it's on my laptop, which is a minute away, but I might have to go do that. Y'all want to take like a 5-minute break? Let me bring my laptop here and see if it'll do better. Or you just want me to try
I'm okay with that, if everyone else is.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can see the building. All I got to do is go over there and get it and bring the laptop back and see if it'll work on it. I'll be right back.
Hey Wayne, are you going to start selling those muzzles now?
No.
Are you sure you don't want to get the contract for that?
No.
Okay, so we're going to talk about taking care of the muzzles. These muzzles are expensive. They're going to run you anywhere from $270 to $285 US. They will last a long time if you take care of them. When you cleaning the muzzle, you want to scrape any dirt or slobber residue that's gotten on the leather on the inside or outside. You can heat the muzzle up. On a good sunny day, you can lay it out in the sun, or you can put it in an oven on about 250 to 300 degrees and let it set. What you want to do is open the pores of the leather up. And you want to wipe or dip the entire muzzle minus the nose piece. The nose piece has a piece of neoprene on it to protect the dog's nose. And if you get Lexol on that, it'll deteriorate it. So you can actually take that nose bridge off of the muzzle. It's real easy. We use a preservative called Lexol. It can be found at your fine leather stores. A lot of saddle shops have Lexol. Don't use any saddle soap or mink foot oil because it allows the leather to stretch. And we're going to talk about checking the muzzle and how to do it before you send the dog. But if you're used to putting that muzzle on one hole all the time and you use saddle soap or mink foot oil and that muzzle stretches, well, then it's going to come off one day in the middle of a fight, and that can be dangerous for your agitators, okay?
Ricky, we can't hear any sound from the video, just the video itself.
Okay, I got the volume is up on it. I don't know. Do you want me to talk while it's talking?
Yeah, if you could, that would be.
Yeah, I don't know. Can't hear the volume. So I'll talk when it's over, and then I'll talk through the rest of them. Okay, so they informed me that you guys cannot hear any volume from the video. I can hear the volume fine here, but for whatever reason, it's not coming through there. But so I'll try to explain the videos. On that video, we were just showing you how to take the nose piece out of the muzzle and talking about putting it in the oven or setting it outside in the sun. And then once you get it all Lexoled up, it will turn it dark. It'll turn it a dark tan color. It won't be light like it is there. Where we're talking about the muzzle conforming to your dog's actual head and muzzle. It's just like a pair of leather shoes. You wear them, they conform to your feet. Once that happens, you don't want to lose that. So you can take newspaper and wad it up in a ball, and you don't want it too big or too small. You want it just the right size to go down in that muzzle. And what that does is after you use it every day, you put that newspaper in there, and it helps draw the moisture out of the muzzle from the dog drinking water or slobbering, which actually helps the dog, or helps the muzzle, I'm sorry, to last longer, because moisture deteriorates leather. So that's what the newspaper does. And of course, you'll change the newspaper periodically, okay? And if you have any questions on any of this, if you'll just write them down, then I'll certainly be glad to answer them at the end. Now we're going to talk about teaching the dog to put the muzzle on. And we're going to talk about placing a hot dog in the muzzle and sliding it over the dog's head. That's one way. We just cut a piece of hot dog long enough that it won't fall through the squares, and then we just place it over the dog's head. So that's what this video is showing you here, is one way that we start teaching the dog to put the muzzle on without giving up a struggle, okay? Always load the strap whole. It makes it a lot easier to put it on the dog's head. So now this is where we're going to actually put the hot dog in the muzzle. The first one, we was just showing you how to load that top strap. If you're just starting to put your dog in muzzle, and you put that muzzle on with his top strap undone, he's going to be thrashing his head and jerking, and it's very difficult to get it connected. But if you'll go ahead and place that top strap in the first hole, then it's a lot easier, as you'll see in the video. But now we're going to place the hot dog in the muzzle and put it on the dog. Okay, so there we actually put the muzzle on his head. And if you put that hot dog in there, you know, for a few weeks every time, then of course the dog anticipates it and he's more than willing to put his head in there. And then all you got to do is pull that top strap to the tightness that you want it on the dog. So it makes it a lot easier. Here we're going to talk about loading a clicker, because we can also use a clicker to get a dog comfortable in the muzzle. So here he's just going to talk about loading the clicker. Click food, click food. I'm sure everybody knows about that, but it's just a video to show you how we do it with just clicking and then feeding, clicking and feeding to make the clicker mean something to the dog. So saying that your marker can be a clicker, it can be a word. You know, you can use a word yes or okay or whatever, and you can load that word just like he's loading the clicker here. Okay. If you say yes and click, then you got two markers, the word yes or clicker. But you can have any marker. It don't have to be a clicker. It can be a whistle or it can be a word like yes or okay. I'm going to fast forward this a little bit to save time. Now he's just talking about your timing. Your marker has to come before the food, like click and food or yes and food. You can't have the timing off. If you do, the dog won't understand. Video here. He's just starting to clicker to get the dog to put the muzzle on. So see, this would just be like stages. So if the dog does anything towards the muzzle, he marks it. Saying here is any interest in the muzzle, he clicks. As the dog gets better and better, he's going to ask the dog to do more and more. Now he's asking for duration. Make the dog put its head in there longer and longer. And here I think he's been working on this dog just in little sessions throughout the day. So that's okay, so now what he's doing is putting a command with it, muzzle, and the dog sticks their nose in there. And so he waits and lets longer and longer before he rewards the dog. So now he's putting a command with it. So now what he's doing is all the way on the dog's head. Okay, so he'll put it behind the ears, then he'll click and let him pull it off. So it's just little baby steps like anything else with clicker training. So now he's asking the dog to shove it in the muzzle even more, its head. He's not just allowing it to barely put it in there, but actually put it all the way on before it gets a marker. The dogs need to be very, very comfortable in the muzzle or they're not going to fight in them. So you're ahead of the game by taking time to make the dog comfortable. So now you see her putting it on nice and good. And now he'll actually start tightening the muzzle up, letting the dog get the feel of the muzzle being around their throat. Okay. I'll go on and speed through this a little bit so that, and now he just leaves it on the dog for a few minutes and then takes it off. Okay. So we'll try to save a little time because I had a hiccup and had to go change computers. We believe in what we just call it a shoulder pad or jewelry effect. Once again, we're trying to get the dog very comfortable in the muzzle. This shoulder pad and jewelry just simply means the dog needs to wear the muzzle a lot. Just like when you first start wearing a wristwatch or a ring, it felt funny to you. But the longer you wore it, your body adjusts to it, and now it seems perfectly normal to have those things around your finger or wrist. When football players start practicing, they start out in shoulder pads and helmet because the body is not used to weight pushing down on it. So they always start the athletes out just in shoulder pads and helmet before they actually start doing scrimmage. It's the same way with a dog. We want to make sure that he's perfectly comfortable in the muzzle before we start any type of training with him in the muzzle. This here is talking about doing a muzzle check. So now we got the dog used to putting the muzzle on. The dog's used to wearing the muzzle. He's comfortable in the muzzle. Now we're going to start doing some little training exercises with the dog and muzzle, but we got to make sure that the muzzle is on the dog properly. If the muzzle comes off, then that's going to be a hazard. So this is how you properly check to make sure that the muzzle won't come off. So what he did there, he placed his hand on the first saber, choke chain, flat collar, any collar the dog's got on. He grabbed it and pushed towards the rear of the dog, and then he grabbed the muzzle right between the dog's ears and pulled forward. You notice the dog was comfortable with this. He didn't jerk and snatch, and it didn't cause the dog to panic. That's all because of the work that we had done up to this point, getting him used to the muzzle and the muzzle being something comfortable. Now here, you're gonna see a dog, you're gonna see dogs just simply what we call play soccer in the muzzle. You get a ball, a soccer ball, basketball, any type of ball that's strong enough that it won't bust when they hit it in the muzzle. And then you just simply go out and play with the dog. Let the dog get used to being able to hit things in the muzzle and start teaching him that he can do things in a muzzle. He's not just totally handicapped because he can't bite something, okay? That's why we start out playing soccer is what we call it. You see the dog's not punching all that good. He doesn't, and then he holds up, and then we'll show you some other dogs that's been doing it a little bit more that actually do better punching it in the muzzle. They're more comfortable in it. This is just a young dog that's just now starting out. Okay, so let's go to another dog that's got a little bit more experience in the muzzle and show you what he does. This is a dog here in the training room that's got a little bit more experience in the muzzle and hits it a little bit better. So many times a dog feels like they're so half sober when they put a muzzle on. They can't do anything. Well, they're certainly not going to go and try to fight somebody in the muzzle if they feel that way. And then we just go to another dog that's done it a little bit more. You see that dog really punches in with the muzzle because he has a little bit more experience in muzzle work. Sometimes you'll hear them clicking their teeth and pushing hard on the ball, trying to actually get their teeth on it to bust it. You should have the gist of it by watching those dogs. I'm going to try to move on to try to make up for some lost time. I don't want to take all you guys' time up. Here we start muzzle pull-offs on a table. So now what we're doing is we're actually placing the muzzle on the dog's head, but it's loose. We have a string hooked to the muzzle. The agitator is either in concealed sleeve or bite suit, depending on what your agitator feels comfortable doing. We do both of them here, bite suit and concealed sleeve. And he's going to come in and let the dog hit him in the muzzle some, and then he's simply going to pull the muzzle off and give the dog a bite. So we're trying to trick the dog into believing that if you continue to fight in that muzzle, you will get to bite the person. Okay, so we call it muzzle pull-offs. Now this is a young dog that's just starting out in muzzle work. So when he comes in, you see the dog thrashing the head. He's trying to get the muzzle off because he wants to bite, but he can't bite. You don't have to hand the string to somebody like that if you don't want to. But if you know the dog and you're friendly with the dog, then you can reach and have the string and help the agitator out. But the agitator can actually get that string on his own. So once again, we'll do another muzzle pull off with another dog so that you can see it from a different angle. We mark the muzzle lick just like you do if a dog's driving in on the bite. If the dog hits you good, then we mark it, okay? This dog was coming through class with its second handler. The first handler got promoted or something. I don't really remember what happened, but so this dog has a lot of experience muzzle fighting, and you can see he was really punching in on the suit because of the experience and the level of fight drive that he had. This dog here is a dog that we would call kind of in the middle. Okay, he's in a half muzzle, so he can actually bite, okay? Now sometimes, see how he let go? The dog don't think he can bite, so sometimes they won't even open their mouth. But what we've done here is we've just cut the C-bar out of the muzzle. So if you get an Akai muzzle and you look at it, it's got a thin piece of metal in the front of it that's in the shape of a C. It's called a C-bar. And you just take snips and cut that out. Now the dog can't bite full. So if you're worried about grips all the time, you wouldn't like this, but it actually helps the dog's grips. When you take this off of the dog and the dog can bite, you'll see the dog bite a lot more full than he was before, and it also encourages the dog to drive into the bite. So all you're doing is just taking the C-bar out of the muzzle. And this is a Belgian Tavern that's also in a half muzzle, but now you can see the front. We did it from this angle. You can see the front is cut out of this muzzle. Okay, see, he didn't even open his mouth there, okay? This is a very, very good biting dog. He won't have a good bite here, once again in a half muzzle, but he bites naturally, really full, drives into the bite really hard. But he was a little bit confused because he was in muzzle and he didn't think he could bite. So we're trying to trick the dog that you might get to bite at any time, even though you're in a muzzle. He's doing a little fake choke there. You see where he picked the dog up like he was going to choke the dog off and then let go. We don't want the dog to be sensitive to someone grabbing their collar on the street. So we just call them fake chokes. You just pick the dog up, tighten the collar up a little bit around the dog's neck, and then let go. This is a half muzzle on a straight runaway. So now we're getting the dogs off of the table. We start out everything on the table so we have more control. Now we're doing half muzzles off of the table. So here's another dog that's doing a half muzzle, doing a straight runaway. Dogs here, this particular dog here is already working the street, so he has plenty of control on him in surveillance position as well. So now they'll walk the camera down so that you can see the dog is biting. So there you can see the dog is biting right there, see? Okay. That's about all he can bite with, but he's trying to bite as good as he can. Okay, this is another one. This is a muzzle pull-off off of the table. So this dog's got a muzzle on, a whole muzzle, but it's on loose, and it has a rope hooked to it. So the agitator can actually pull the muzzle off. Now, I wouldn't do muzzle pull-offs or half muzzles in conceal sleeve off of the table unless you have a really experienced agitator that's been doing it for long periods of time, because sometimes that muzzle will come off on its own. So you got to really be paying attention or you'll get yourself bit, okay? See, he just snatches the muzzle off and then the dog gets the bite. So that's a muzzle pull-off off of the table, okay? Now this is a muzzle pull-off and a peekaboo. I want to show you this all the way to the end. These peekaboos are really, really good for dropping the dog's threshold. And a dog working the street needs to have a really good threshold. That was a good muzzle lick there by a seasoned dog that's on the street. So he's just letting the dog hit him. He's fighting the dog a little bit, trying to get a hold of the string. Sometimes it's hard to get it, but you can get it. Now he's got it. He takes it off. And the dog bites. Okay, it didn't come all the way off. It just slipped over his mouth. That's perfectly fine. You know, you don't worry about that. Are we going to come in and let the guy actually choke the dog off completely? Some people call it a tactical remover or removing him strong. We always let the dog chase the guy out of sight. People that don't do muzzle work don't understand it. Sometimes they say you can't reward the dog if you got a muzzle on him. Well, you can reward a dog by a psychological reward, by giving ground to the dog. Okay, if two dogs are in a fight, the dog that loses always gives ground to the one that beat him. So here he's doing peekaboos, he's giving ground to the dog, and that's stemming the dog. And if you do this a lot with dogs, you'll have to actually drag them back to the car, because over time, they get built up stronger and stronger. And you could release the dog at any time. Don't always let the dog, see the dog lay down, he went right into surveillance position because he wanted to go fight again. But you can release the dog at any time during those peekaboos, so the dog never knows what he might not get sent again. That keeps the dog's threshold very low. Here we're going to talk a little bit about safety while muzzle fighting, things that you can do to keep yourself safe, and I'll explain it to you as the video is running. We're talking about ways to get injured. If your finger goes inside the muzzle, you'll be real lucky if it don't get bit off. Over the years, I've seen 3 fingers get bit off, but that's in 30-something years. So it's not like it happens very often, but it will happen if you put your hand in the muzzle. So we're talking about keeping your hands in a fist while you're fighting the dog, okay? Now, the reason I'm putting my hands away is we're talking about, you don't want to push the dog away from you while you're fighting. You want the dog to believe that he's winning. If you push him away from you all the time, you're going to make the dog start fighting low around your legs because you can't push him there. We want the dog to fight the torso part of the body, not the arms. Now we're talking about putting your hand in the lower part of your back, but you got to have your hand open. You can't have it balled up in a fist. If the dog hits you in a muzzle right there with it in a fist, it's going to break your fingers. But you lay it in the lower part of your back with your hand open to protect your kidneys and your lower back. Now we're trying to slap the dog around his head. Keep your hands away from his head. You don't want your finger in the muzzle. You don't want to poke the dog in the eye. So keep your hands away from the dog's head at all times while you're fighting, okay? You also want to lean forward. If you're running straight away from a dog and you got your hand open in the lower part of your back, you want to lean forward a little bit so that when that dog hits you, he's not hitting something that's straight and all that negative energy is going down his spine. You want to be leaned over a little bit so that when he hits you, he glances off of you, okay? It's much safer for the dog if it's a glancing blow and not hitting something flat. Now we're going to talk about muzzle fighting the dog, the skills that it takes to do it. Just reminding you to have your hand in the lower part of your back. When the dog hits you, he's going to fall to the left or right of the dog. It's going to fall off to your left or right. Once he does that, if he falls to your right, then you're going to turn to the left. So you're just shadow boxing the dog in a circle, okay? So we're talking about there, if the dog hits you, now he can hit you in the front, he can hit you in the other side. So you're just fighting in a circle. You don't have to continuously run straight away from the dog. You don't want to go to the ground unless you absolutely have to. If you go to the ground while you're muzzle fighting, you're now prey. Okay, you are a lesser threat to the dog. You're prey. You see a lot of people muzzle fighting and they go to the ground and they stay on the ground. You don't want to stay on the ground rolling around. You want to be up on your feet. And always remember to run out of sight when you're finished. Now we're talking about if you're standing up and the dog's going to hit you while you're standing up still. You don't want to be facing the dog or looking away from him. You want to oblique yourself and turn sideways. And I'll show you the position to be in just a second. You got to bend your knees. Do not have your knees locked. If you have your knees locked, you're going to damage your knee or break a bone in your foot or something. You want your knees to be bent so if the dog hits you, he'll knock your feet out from under you. And you may go to the ground, but you won't be injured, okay? So now we're talking about covering ribs, okay, with your arm. Don't let the dog just get a good straight blow on your ribs. Take your other hand and cover your groin area so the dog don't hit you in the groin head on. If you want to wear a cup, that's not a bad idea, to wear a cup while you're doing muzzle work as well. In this next video, we're going to show you positions that you can get into when you're fighting the dog. Like if you're hiding in a building, this first one, we're going to assume that you're hiding in a building and you're going to be laying on the ground. You don't want to lay on the ground turned up on your side because now the dog has a clean shot at your back. And if you get a dog that muzzle fights really well, he can actually injure you. We had a student one time, few years back, that done what he was told not to do, went out in an open field, laid down, but he turned up on his side and the dog hit him in the kidney and ruptured it. He spent some time in the hospital. So when you're laying down, you want to be flat. You don't want to have your back to where the dog can get a good blow on your back. Now I'm talking, the next phase is pitch, where everything is passive until the dog engages you. So you got to be able to lay perfectly still. So you got to have your body in a position to where you don't get injured. Because if you put yourself in a vulnerable position, you can get injured with a dog in a muzzle. Now this is how you don't is exposed to the dog. The dog gets a really good hard lick, especially if it's a lit area and the dog sees you before he gets to you. Now, if it's totally dark in a room, the dog's using nothing but his nose, then he's not going to get up a lot of speed before he hits you. This is how you want to lay. Your face away from the dog, your arm protecting your ribs, and you cross your feet. See how my feet are crossed? That prevents the dog from running up your leg and hitting you in the groin real hard. So you always want to have your feet crossed, facing away from the dog when you're in a building, okay? We'll go on to another video here. And here's what we call stop and goes. You might recognize this to Vern. He was on the table doing half muzzle. This is a young10 and a half months old when we got him. He's done the table work. He's done muzzle pull-offs, half muzzles. And now we're doing stop and goes. The agitator comes in, the dog hits him, he runs away, stops, the handler sends the dog. The dog runs and hits him, and the agitator either goes to the ground, fights for a minute, then gets back up, or you don't have to go to the ground. But always remember, if you go to the ground, you get up and fight the dog. You don't just stay on the ground like a fish out of water flopping around, because that's prey. That's not how it's going to happen on the street, and you're not enhancing the dog's fight drive when you're on the ground, okay? So next sends on, rest of the bit. Okay, so now he goes to the ground. Okay, you want the dog to know that people may go on the ground, okay, but you don't want to stay on the ground. So now the agitator ran and stopped. That's why it's called stop and goes. He ran away and stopped, and the handler sent the dog again, okay? And you just do this 3 or 4 times, you know, till the dog gets winded and can't fight no more, and then you have to stop, okay? So that's the end of the show. I apologize for the hiccups that we had, but I did tell you in the beginning this was my first one, so hopefully you got something out of it. If you have any questions, you can feel free to contact us by email or look me up on Facebook or call me on my cell phone or however way that you want to try to reach me. And then we just build from those stop and goes. We build, and that dog graduated about 2 weeks ago, and he was doing muzzle fight in buildings before he left. So he went from not knowing anything about a muzzle, not wanting to fight any in the muzzle at all. He wouldn't even engage an agitator because he's like, I can't bite him, so I'm not even going to do anything, up to doing muzzle fights in the building in a period of 8 weeks. So that it happens relatively quick. Some dogs take longer than others in muzzle work, just like any other facet of training. It's all dependent on the level of genetics the dog has, of course. But this dog learned pretty quickly, and he should continue to get better in the muzzle. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them, but I'll turn it back over to Wayne.
So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask Ricky. Well, seems we're done for the day.
Hey, I got one question for Ricky.
Yep, go away. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Maybe just talk a little bit. Do you believe in teaching the dog targeting while in muzzle instead of him, you know, just hitting you randomly in any part of the body? How can we, you know, enforce the targeting techniques instead of the dog just, especially, you know, going just towards the legs, for example? I know the stop and goes help us with doing those upper body hits. But is it a good idea to practice that targeting even though he's in muzzle?
Yes, you can do that, Oscar. That's a good question. We don't particularly use a lot of targeting training as far as wanting the dog to hit just a particular part of the body. I believe that a police dog should bite somebody from the bottom of their foot to their head. It just depends on what they can get a hold of. I don't teach the dog to bite people in the head, neither do I teach him to bite them in the foot. But I think that the dog should know that he can bite a person anywhere that he can get his mouth on, because we never know where the person's going to be hiding or what he's going to be trying to protect his body with and what part of his body. However, you do bring up a good point about targeting for what we use. Like sometimes we'll have the dog in muzzle and we may have a bite suit top on. And of course the dog's gonna wanna hit the bite suit versus hitting the legs. And we'll do that in the beginning, trying to get him to muzzle fight better. And then we'll also use that as equipment conflict. And as the dog gets better, then we'll drop the jacket off of us and teach the dog that he must continue to come on with us, because the fight is with the man. The fight is not with the equipment. Like we have all of our students, before they leave, they're working their dog and they themselves are wearing a bite suit. The handler is actually wearing a bite suit. And we'll send the dog to a muzzle fight, or we'll send the dog to concealed sleeve bite, or we may send the dog to bite somebody else in a bite suit. But the handler himself is wearing a bite suit as well, because we don't want there to be so much value in the equipment. The value is fighting the man. But we, like I said earlier, we do use targeting. We may put a concealed sleeve on, but have it exposed, and take the sleeve and have it in the lower part of our back when we're running away from the dog. The dog hits us, then we may move it to the front of our body across our chest and let the dog hit it. But we do those things usually early in training, just teaching the dog that he can do something in the muzzle. And we mark those licks. You know, the dog hits you, oh, you know, you make a sound to let the dog feel like that he's really hurting you when he does that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. I think very important that targeting. Yeah, dogs should bite anywhere, but we just kind of make it a little bit easier if the dog is used to hitting. You know, you get primary and secondary targets, and it's just going to be easier to prevent a failure. So just using the muzzle at the same time, since it's one of the things we do most is muzzle fighting, to avoid that equipment stuff. So it's just a good idea to practice that targeting, but it definitely answered my question. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions for Ricky? All right, Ricky, thank you so much. We might call it a day there. Much appreciated. Hope everyone enjoyed, and have a good day.
Yes, thank you, Wayne.